The number of businesses and startups that fail because co-founders have a break in their relationship is really high. And I've heard a lot of stories about people who end up going down a path that they started on that actually isn't working for them anymore. If you're in a place of decision-making power, it is your responsibility to make sure you know what you are doing and why. It's not selfish. It's for everybody. And it might mean that you have to make some really difficult decisions that impact the people around you. And I think if I didn't have that ability to just stop and slow myself down, that I might not have even recognized it. So I think that's really important.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Wealth. Today I'm joined by Anne Cullen. Anne, why don't you give us the TLDR on who you are and what you do?
Oh, sure. Well, just to help people understand my accent, I spent the first half of my life in the US and I now live in Namu, New Plymouth, New Zealand, where I've spent the second half of my life with my Kiwi husband and raising our two kids who are 18 and 21, which is very relevant to the work that I do. I started out working with kids and families just in general. And now my work is generally with advising business owners and other really high performers with kind of the relational dynamics that they face in business, in family life, and kind of everywhere they go.
Okay. Yeah, that's been like a long time in the making, and also what you've been doing, spending time on and focusing on. I guess 12 years in, that's deep. That's deep into kind of the reps that you get to do when doing something for so long. I guess what was the catalyst that originally got you to do that? Was there a specific contracting role that kind of had a lens to relationship that had a lens where you were like, oh, this is repeatable, or this is something I really enjoy doing, or, and then I guess, beyond that kind of business ownership, and was that all planned, or what was the kind of vibe?
Well, I mean, looking back, the two things I've always been obsessed with are businesses, like being entrepreneurial, starting businesses, and people. And really about recognizing, I think I've always recognized that people do well when they can, and, when they have the skills and the support and the tools and knowledge. And that translated in my younger self as working with kids. But as I developed my skills, I realized I got more comfortable working with adults. So it was quite an interesting journey. But really what I found when I worked with parents in their homes where we were focusing on the kids, that the best way I could make a difference in the world would be actually supporting parents. And then it just seems so natural. If I love hanging around people with that founder's mindset and the entrepreneurial mindset. And so really my favorite people to work with are entrepreneurs who are parents. They're running successful businesses and they want their family life to match their business life. And, one of the concerning, I'm not very good with actual statistics. I can't tell you the exact numbers, but the number of businesses and startups that fail because co-founders have a break in their relationship is really high. And so, it's like people have so much at stake if they don't consider those relational dynamics. And that also comes back to you as a business owner, as a founder, as a parent, wherever you go in the world, understanding yourself and how you can better relate to people to get the outcomes that you want. So, I'm not directly advising people on how to set up their accounting systems or their financial systems or anything like that. We're looking at the stuff that often doesn't get spoken about in any other space.
What was the aha moment when you was there a specific memory you have or a specific example where you're where I guess the business really kind of became clear?
Yeah, to be honest, it wasn't that long ago because I allow myself, I guess, to evolve. So when I started my business, I opened a place called the Nurture Center, which was actually just focused on parenting. It wasn't focused at all on business. I just thought I am a business owner. I am entrepreneurial, but I'm just going to to help parents, right? And so what I realized over time was that the parents that I understand the best are like me. They're entrepreneurs. They're business owners. And it's a very unique dynamic when you're doing both. And now everybody I work with isn't necessarily a business owner. You know, they might be a top athlete or they have really high pressured and successful careers, maybe. And they're not all parents, and they're certainly not all parents of young children. But that's kind of my sweet spot, really, because I know I can help so much with the parenting dynamics, the dynamics between a couple, whether you're working in the business together or not, or, you know, between you and your co-founder. And it was like, gosh, why am I not just owning this is what I want to do? And it was like, I looked at my client list a couple of years ago and kind of went, oh, look who you're working with. So I have to say, I almost fell accidentally into it. But I talk a lot about intentionality. And I think it's really important to stop and take time. And, you know, we can get on a path, especially if you're highly driven. You can get on a path. And I've heard a lot of stories about people who end up going down a path that they started on that actually isn't working for them anymore. And I think if I didn't have that ability to just stop and slow myself down, that I might not have even recognized it. So I think that's really important.
And what do you feel like the biggest wins someone can get? I know that sounds really kind of entry level, but like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, yeah, there are basically, often three primary dynamics, right? You've got co-founder relationship, partner alignment and relationship, and then kind of people you're dragging along with you, which are your children. So what are those really fundamental principles or techniques that are really helpful? One example for each category of how you kind of think about and how you coach around those three dynamics.
Yes. Well, so I talk about confidence, and confidence doesn't mean that you're necessarily bold and thinking, I absolutely know what to do. But when you come from that place of confidence, it's usually because, well, what I would hope at least is because you've kind of done the exploring, you've done the work, you've stopped and paused, and you're being really intentional. So you're moving confidently because you know where you're going and you know why you're going there, right? So you move through with confidence. And this is like, and it literally is in all of those relationships. It's in the relationship you have to your business, like what matters to me most, what matters in my relationship the most. So you go through and make your decisions confidently. And, you know, that kind of goes along with clarity, although they can be a little bit different. But if you don't have that confidence moving through, then, like I say, you're just going to go all over the place and not be able to make decisions from that place of clarity. And lastly, I talk about connection. And this is where, you know, when I got into business, we didn't talk about leadership the same way we're talking about it now. We talked about it as kind of top-down directives, more like sometimes what people think of managers now, and that connecting to the people you're leading is vital. It's vital, you know, and that is, it's everywhere you go.
For sure. Okay. And I guess what's been the evolution of those kind of dynamics over the last 12 years, you know, because our working relationships, our working kind of structure has now changed. Everything's more accessible. People are having to deal with a lot more noise and a lot more kind of pressure, whether it be self-inflicted or not. And nonetheless, it's the same thing. It's pressure and it's a noise that kind of can help really blur what even a minute or an hour really means to us anymore.
Yeah, that's quite interesting to think about, because really what busyness or pressure gets us to do is act on autopilot. And I get really excited with the way we're talking differently. I still think we have a very long way to go, especially when we're looking at, you know, say a startup founder or, you know, someone that's really, you know, there's this whole thing about you got to work hard to succeed at the cost of everything else. And, you know, it's not really about choosing, you know, saying someone's wrong for choosing what's important to them, but it's like, are you actually choosing what's important to you? And I think we're seeing a really big shift in people, especially when we're looking at younger people. We're seeing a really big shift in people going, you know what, I don't actually want to go through my life on autopilot and just reacting to pressure. I want to be intentional. I want to get to the end and be like, yeah, this is where I was going. This is who I wanted to be. This is what I wanted wanted to achieve. And instead of a lot of what, I went to university with, a lot of children of highly successful people. And I sat in classes and heard a lot from my peers, and they talked about their absent parents. Their parents were just off building their empires, right? And those are often, the stories we hear. It's like, and I find it the most devastating thing is when I'm talking to a couple, especially who's working in a business together, and their business has probably been going great, but their relationship's falling apart. Their kids are, possibly causing some extra stress, and there's so much tension. And because they've built this up together, the danger is that they're going to lose everything because they weren't intentional. They were just so focused on that. I got to build. And again, that's fine if you're truly like, okay, this is what we're doing at all costs, and we're willing to pay the prices. So I get excited that we're making a shift overall.
Yeah. So culturally in business, like we're more aware of that dynamic and the finite nature of what we're spending our time on and what it really means.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I'm seeing that incrementally, but I'm also seeing more demand actually for, it depends. I think there's a divergence, right? I think that there's been some of that. I think there's a lot of tired business owners in New Zealand right now that have grown businesses really well and haven't built the systems in place that they need to actually take the business to the next level and move into governance. And I think that group yearns perhaps for maybe what you're describing. And then I'd say there's also another group of operators that feel a lot of pressure from the incoming technology threat, and they feel like they have to get a lot more out of the business, and even the employees are feeling that pressure to deliver more. And I think that that's an interesting dynamic that we're faced with in the economy and as business owners.
Yeah, this was kind of around what I was thinking before you said that, which is it's great that we're starting to change what we're talking about and wanting something different for our lives. However, that doesn't release the pressure. It probably does increase it in a lot of ways. And the way I think about that is through the, alignment. And that pressure to me is an internal signal that something is misaligned. And I understand, especially if you've got a machine that is moving, whether it feels like it's in your control or not, if it's moving, it's really hard to kind of go, oh, wait, is this really what we want to create? Like, is this really, but what I've experienced and I mean, I've experienced it myself. I'm not doing it anymore. I've had to put the brakes on and think, wait a minute, like, is what I'm creating at the cost of things that actually matter more to me? And I think as business owners, or I mean, if you're in a place of decision making, if you hold decision making power. So, and of course, this is parents at home, right?
Totally right. Yeah,
it's exactly the same, but on very different things, But it's like if you're in a place of decision making power, it is your responsibility to make sure you know what you are doing and why. It's not selfish. It's for everybody. And it might mean that you have to make some really difficult decisions that impact the people around you. But, if you kept following that trajectory for 5 more years or 10 more years, where are you really getting to, So it's hard to, I think being intentional doesn't necessarily mean you have to slow down.
No.
It just means once you make the decision, you're confident that it was the best one, for the right reasons, not just because, oh my gosh, I've got people depending on me. And I understand. I've done that. And every parent does that constantly. I mean, I know my husband feels that he's an employee, but he definitely feels that pressure. It's like once you've got kids, there's so much riding on that. You only get one chance to raise your kids. But yeah. So again, it's not about, and there are seasons. There are seasons of growth. When you talk about, of course, we've got AI happening. It's a huge, I'm not an expert in AI, but it's a change of season. And this is a time where people really need to, I know everyone wants to move really fast, but I'm inviting people to say, I'm going to keep moving fast, and I'm not going to do it all from a place of pressure on autopilot. I'm going to take some time to make those intentional decisions for myself, for my business, for my family.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to be caught with decision fatigue, be making a lot of decisions and then have a lot of pressure when you're making the important ones, right?
That's right.
That's basically what you're saying. And yeah, no, that's totally a huge thing that founders face every day, right? Like,
huge.
Especially when, you're only one part of you is your business. Now, for a lot of founders as well, when you're deep into it, of course, it becomes a larger part of your identity than perhaps it should be. And that is the thing. And I think that there's some good, I guess, acceptance that you can do individually around business ownership and what you're doing and your own identity that can be really helpful.
Yeah.
From separating you from outcomes and decisions not going the way you may want. There's a great book by Annie Duke, who's an amazing author and professional poker player in the US.
Yep.
And she has this book called Thinking in Bets. I don't know if you've read it.
I have not read that.
But it's really worth a read. And it's all about disassociating your identity from your decisions.
Yeah.
And basically...
in business, especially.
Yeah,
just in business, especially.
Oh, totally, yeah. Yeah, so now she started in poker. Poker's a really great game for that specific purpose of being able to make those those kind of system 2 thinking decisions, right? Whereas if we get caught into system 1 thinking, which is, again, what you're talking about, right? Which is, I have to do this, so now where's my decision? Okay, go. And then it's that again. And it's thinking, I'm reading a book at the moment called Super Forecasters. And it's about, it's tip of the nose thinking, which is that system 1 thinking. But, like now, Annie Duke advises all these VCs, hedge funds, investors, business leaders, because now she's kind of built a framework around how to evaluate the decision, not the outcome. And that's
yeah, no, that sounds really good. And I really love that you brought up the idea of identity, because it is a huge one and we do connect. And I can't remember who it was, but a man he does lots of like interrogation and things like this and, really, really high stakes stuff. And basically his point was, every decision I've made, I have no regrets. I know where I'm making the decision from. And as long as I know where I'm making, and you're not going to always get it right. I mean, that's the worst lesson we have to learn as business owners, and parents and just in life in general. And, this is where as parents or as a boss, modeling, the idea of kind of a growth mindset, or it's okay to make mistakes. We just need to know, again, have that clarity of why did you make that decision? And, if you can get to the point of having the emotional intelligence to recognize you made a decision because you were reacting from pressure, own it, own where you made it, because you can't learn and make better decisions from a better place if you can't recognize what you're doing, first of all. And, so the privilege I have of working privately with high performing people is I get to see that we're all the same and we are all hiding so much. We are all not talking about what's actually going on for us. We can sit and go, oh yeah, there's so much pressure and yeah, I feel it too. But I mean, it's really, really a privilege to do the work that I get to do. And it's changed me. I learned pretty well from other people's mistakes. Yep. So we're all going through the same stuff, and there's such high stakes. And especially if you have a partner, children, and employees, you have so much riding on your shoulders. You are carrying so much, even if it seems like everything's going well, generally it's not, because who can carry all that? It's hard.
It's totally awesome. So in regards to like you then and what you're building, and you've been doing this for 12 years, and what is success look like for you in the next 5 years? Is it doing the same thing, or is there a shift, a trend that you're seeing that kind of makes you think about the future differently? Like, what is your kind of North Star for you can change the time horizon if you like, but we often offer up a 5-year time horizon. But what does that look like?
Yeah, well, as much as I love private advisory work, and I mean, that's the most, the deepest value I can provide for a person, and I can't see ever stopping that work. But I come from the frame overall that people do well when they can. And And what I see in business, in families, in schools, everywhere is that people don't believe that. People believe that when people aren't doing well, it's because they're lazy, they're unmotivated, they don't care, all kinds of reasons that just simply aren't true, at least 99% of the time. And so I'm actually very, very purpose driven, and I'm planning more of a speaking trajectory because I think everyone needs to understand that at a really deep level, and they need to know what to do with that information. So that's kind of my overall mission.
Yeah. What do you find your biggest challenges in this new world? You know, everything that's going on, the world's changing. What do you find your biggest challenges?
I find my biggest challenge is listening to people that don't already think those things. That, you know, I come from Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is in the news quite a lot at the moment. And I'm really, I can get on my worst days, like, why am I even trying? But I mean, I've cared about this since I was at least 7 years old. I remember thinking this when I was 7. So it's been at least that long, and I'm way older than I look, probably. But I can get really discouraged by what I see happening in the world and in schools, and how we react to what our governments are doing. So I can get pulled into that some days, on my bad days. I mean, we all have bad days, bad moments where I think, that's it, I'm done.
Is that kind of not putting the glass down kind of vibe? Of holding other people's or other circumstances that are sometimes out of your control, but feel very viscerally connected, and being able to basically say, actually, no, I feel something in this moment, but I'm actually going to put the weight of that down.
Oh, I mean, I haven't stopped yet, so I don't think I'm going to stop. So. Like, it's just grown bigger. The desire just, I mean,
oh, no.
It almost is like a fuel for it, you know? And I think, you know, to use Simon Sinek's famous why, it's like, if you have a proper driving force, you know, and the thing is, you know, people can think they know why they're doing something. Like a classic one for mothers and fathers is, I'm doing this for my kids. And it's like, okay, well, I went to university with a lot of people whose parents probably thought they were doing it for their kids, but I listened to their kids talk about how they never had a relationship with their parent, you know? So it's like, were you really? Yeah. So, you know, we can get caught in those traps. So I haven't lost sight of my vision.
So it's really, how do you have the biggest impact on enabling relationships, intergenerational relationships within families of people that have a lot of noise going on?
Yeah. And getting into, you know, the higher amount of decision-making influence or power people have. I mean, if you have a company with many employees and you can understand this and you can lead your company, like, you are changing everyone in that company and everyone as they go home. You know, if schools could operate from this, if you know, gosh, we look at, you know, it's kind of gone out of the news. We talked about ram raiders, and we need to, you know, send these kids off to boot camp, and we need to get tough. And so I have the benefit of being just a systems analyst and a systems, not in a financial sense, but in a people sense. You know, I see and have a lot of knowledge about how big and small, from the family system up to the government system, and how they all function. And we need to get to the people with the most influence to make the change. And so that's kind of I don't know how far I'll get in 5 years, but...
Yeah, that's really cool. So what do you think one habit is that any busy person that's making a lot of decisions can do to better engage with the people in their household? What's a good habit?
Yeah, the pause. I feel like it's almost getting over talked about, in a sense, to pause, to stop, to breathe. But the thing is, your brain is a prediction machine. It works really well. It's very, very fast. So if you don't have a simple way to override the really quick prediction your brain is making to tell you what to do next or how to perceive this moment, I mean, it's the hardest but simplest, you know, thing you can do is learn to pause before you do everything and kind of just give yourself a space It doesn't even have to be a long space, but it's like I say, when I started talking about it and advising my clients around the pause, I feel like we weren't really talking about it a lot. And I'm so happy to hear. And I think anytime you hear someone saying you need to stop and take a breath, take that very seriously. Yeah, it's the biggest thing, especially with your kids. So hard.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree. Well, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. I've really enjoyed it.
It's nice.
And I think that a lot of people, myself included, I've got 3 kids, battle with that. And also, it's not just down below, it's also above in terms of trying to find bridges and find a way of working within households. And I think that one of the most difficult things I think modern society has is actually that we lose a lot of traditions and we lose a lot of the family culture that used to be built because things were just created a little bit differently in how things worked, how fast things moved. And I think that we can all need to take time to really think strategically and openly about how we can navigate this for our entire families.
Yeah. And, you can also influence other families as a business owner, because when you lead that way, you're the same leader wherever you go, whether you're just leading your own life, you're leading at home, you're leading in your business, you're leading in a community group, wherever you are leading, you are the same person. So when you adopt these intentional practices, the pause is strategic. It's not just a fluff. It is your strategy. It is your strategy. So you lead wherever you go. So it's not just family, but for most of us, it's like if you had a choice to lose your business or lose your family, we all know we would choose family to keep, right? But the reality is you don't make that choice. It's like if you're forced to, you know what the choice would be, but we are trying to do it all. And that's wonderful and challenging.
Totally. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks
for having me, Charlie.